Hello and welcome to this Part 2 IELTS speaking lecture in which I will describe an interesting talk or lecture. You should say when you heard it, where you heard it, what it was about, and explain why you think it was interesting. I've decided to talk about a speech that was given by the principal of my high school. On the first day of high school, roughly 6 years ago now, we had to go to the lecture theatre, and it was quite nerve-wracking because I didn't know any of my classmates, as I had moved to a different school from my friends at primary school. Normally, speeches on the first day are tedious, and I don't really listen closely to them. But from the moment the principal started speaking, I was engrossed. I cannot remember word for word what she said, but the message was about the exciting opportunity we had to reinvent ourselves at high school. In primary school, I was always quite a shy and timid person, and didn't have many friends. I really didn't like being the centre of attention. Well, I still don't, to be honest. Here I was in a new school with no friends, but after listening to the speech, I felt inspired to make more effort to make new friends. As soon as the speech finished, we were taken to a new classroom and told to find somewhere to sit. I walked in and saw a girl sitting by herself. Before this talk, I would have been afraid to go and talk to her, but feeling encouraged and more confident, I walked over and asked if anyone was sitting there, and she said no, so I sat down and introduced myself. We are now best friends, and I have had so much fun with her and support from her over the last few years, which would not have happened if I hadn't sat next to her. I'm incredibly grateful to the principal for saying something that made me take action and do something I wouldn't usually do. It was out of my comfort zone, so I needed a push to do it. There are not many times in life when we get the opportunity to reinvent ourselves, so this speech was inspirational and empowering because it gave me the chance to stop being introverted and to grasp the opportunity to become a better version of myself. Okay, so let's take a look at the language used in this topic. I found it a hard one to decide what to do, something that you could all talk about. So this is why I picked this one. It's not a particularly interesting topic. And just change the dates. I wasn't at high school 6 years ago. I'm much older than that. But change the dates to suit yourself. You could talk about going to university or going to high school or something like that. So I've decided to talk about, make sure that when you walk into that exam room, you know how you're going to start your Part 2 speaking. So that is fixed in your mind. And I particularly like this because it's got the present perfect. A speech that was given, very good to use the passive in this topic. So a lecture that was given by, a speech that was given by. The principal is the person in charge of a school, sometimes called a headmaster or principal. Roughly, we can use this in writing as well, and it means about. A lecture theatre is what you have in schools or universities, and where it's a big room and it can usually take maybe 100, 200 people, and the lecturer or the teacher stands at the front and talks to everybody. Nerve-wracking. This is a very useful complex word, and it's when something makes you nervous. It is nerve-wracking. I had moved, some past perfect, so this thing had happened before this lecture. I had moved to a different school. Normally, usually. Tedious, very useful word instead of boring. We talk about listening closely to something, and this means to pay good attention to something, to listen closely. I don't really listen closely to them. But I was engrossed. When you're engrossed, you can talk about reading a book or a film, and you are engrossed, and it means you're fascinated by it. It has your attention. It has captured your attention. To remember something word for word means literally that, to remember every single word. But we don't often remember every single word. So I'm saying I cannot remember word for word what she said. So I cannot remember exactly what she said, but the message. So when somebody gives a speech or a talk or a lecture, there is an overall message. To reinvent ourselves. So sometimes, like pop stars reinvent themselves. They change their hair, they change their physical appearance. But here I'm talking about reinventing my personality to become more outgoing, to become more confident, because I was a shy and timid person. Both these words have the same meaning, but I'm just putting them in to show to the IELTS examiner that I have a large vocabulary. Very useful for talking about people. If you're describing a person, a famous person, usually famous people like being the centre of attention. To be the centre of attention means everybody's attention is on them. So a person at a party who is the really sociable one and is talking to everybody and is having lots of fun and everybody's looking at that person, they are the centre of attention. Remember, we can always use words negatively, so I didn't like being the centre of attention. But after this speech, I felt inspired. Certainly, whatever you're talking about in this topic, you have to talk about feeling inspired. And this means that the person has made you want to go away and do something. As soon as, so it's like when the speech finished, we were taken, some good passive. I would have been afraid. This means if I hadn't heard this talk, this speech, I would have been afraid. So I'm putting myself back in that situation. And if I hadn't heard it, this is how I would have felt. So some very complex grammar. Afraid is scared or sorry. Like inspired, you can use the word encouraged. So it's when somebody says something or does something that makes you feel more confident, you feel encouraged. And here I'm imagining this would not have happened if I hadn't sat next to her. So this is the third conditional, an imaginary situation in the past. So because you're describing a talk or lecture that was good, so you have to think if you hadn't heard it, what would have happened or would not have happened. And that's very useful for this topic. Incredibly grateful. Very useful for IELTS Writing Task 1 General when you're writing letters. I'm incredibly grateful for, meaning thankful, very thankful. Here's a good collocation: to make you take action. To take action means do something. Now, this is very useful because you could use this in writing as well. You have a comfort zone and it's what you feel comfortable doing. So before I started recording videos for this online course, I was a classroom teacher. I taught students face to face. I had hundreds of students who came to the UK to study and I was teaching them face to face. I decided to change my career and stop teaching face-to-face and decided to do these online videos. But it was out of my comfort zone. I didn't feel comfortable doing it because I'd never done this before. Now I've made hundreds of videos and I feel comfortable. But when something's out of your comfort zone, it makes you feel really uncomfortable. This is really complex language. It's really great language. So you could use it. You could even use it in IELTS writing if you were talking about the environment and saying more people should use public transport. However, it is out of their comfort zone. Personally, I don't use public transport much, and it's because it is out of my comfort zone. I'm not familiar with it, and so you need to make it easier for them to use. So very useful language. To reinvent yourself, we had that previously. Remember to create a different version, a different you. Inspirational, so when a speech inspires you, you feel inspired, it's because the speech was inspirational. Very useful word, empowering. And this means it gives you the power to do something. So this speech by the principal made me feel confident. It made me feel inspired. And I was empowered because the speech was empowering. So it gave me the power to do something. Introverted. Very useful for talking about people. We can talk about introverts, extroverts. Those are the nouns. If you are introverted, you're very shy, you're very withdrawn, you're very quiet. If you're extroverted, you're very outgoing, you're very confident. Very useful for IELTS writing as well. Task 2, to grasp the opportunity. And it means to take the opportunity. And a better version of myself just means a different you, but an improved you. A better version of myself. I've gone through this video quite fast because there was actually quite a lot of language in it, and quite a lot of language that's useful for other topics and for writing. It is a tricky topic. All of these describe a situation ones are quite difficult, but certainly if you're describing a talk or lecture, think about these words: to inspire, and you've got inspirational, inspiring. I felt inspired. You've got to empower. You have empowering. I felt empowered. You've got to encourage, encouraging, and I felt encouraged. So even if you just remember those words, it's better than just repeating the same things and saying it was really good, and after it I did this. So lots of useful language in there. Hope you found that useful. Thank you for watching.